There's a lot happening with New Jersey's child welfare system. We want to help you make sense of it and share our story. This is DCF On The Air.
This is DCF On The Air, and I'm Jason Bukowski. In New Jersey, and we've talked about this on the podcast a few times already, we are experiencing, just like the rest of the nation, a youth mental health crisis. When you look at the numbers, nationally speaking, we're dealing with 1 in 3 teen boys and 3 in 5 teen girls who are expressing feelings of persistent sadness and hopelessness. 1 in 7 Black students and 1 in 5 LGBTQ plus students have attempted suicide. So this is a very real crisis for the entire country. New Jersey is not alone in this space. Although I do know that when we look at the New Jersey numbers, there is a sense of hope. We are seeing fewer mobile response, stabilization dispatches going out. We're seeing per capita fewer suicide attempts. So we are making some headway. Part of the way we're doing that is through a continuum of care. So when we think about youth mental health, it's not just those acute crisis points where we're addressing some behavioral health crisis with clinical therapeutic support. It's also those personal crises, those little crises that come up during the course of the average school year. How are we supporting those so that maybe there's a challenge that a student is experiencing, that a young person is experiencing? We're getting there before it becomes a crisis point, and we're providing support and help to that young person. So today I'm joined by one of our providers in this space who's really helping to set the stage for a more emotionally safe New Jersey for young people. And I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves, and we're going to talk a little bit about the second floor service and what's that. Let me take that part again. So today we're talking to one of our providers in this space, Second Floor, and the services that they provide to young people to help make a safer New Jersey, to grow up and to thrive. So I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves, and we'll get into our conversation.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Liz Graham, and I am the CEO of 180 Turning Lives Around, and 180 Turning Lives Around operates the Second Floor Youth Helpline.
Thanks for having us, Jason. My name is Kyle Pettis. I'm a youth ambassador for Second Floor.
Hi, thanks, Jason, for having us, and thank you, everybody, for listening. I am Patricia Behrens, and I am the outreach coordinator for the Second Floor Youth Helpline.
Great. So thank you, and welcome to DCF On The Air. As we begin, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Second Floor service. When was it started, and what are some of the services that are provided through Second Floor?
So Second Floor launched as a pilot back in 2003. It was launched in Monmouth County and expanded to Middlesex County. And in 2008, it became a statewide program as part of a RFP with this Department of Children and Families, and went statewide in September of 2008. And the concept of Second Floor is really to be an anything line so that young people don't have to think about why they should reach out to us. We know that, like you said, there's an epidemic of loneliness in our community. And the concept is so that young people know there is no, this is not a suicide hotline. This is not a pregnancy line. This is to call about anything that is on their minds. And we're available 24/7. The line is confidential and anonymous. And we're really proud of the work that we have done since 2008. We have had contact with over 1 million young people in the state of New Jersey. And it's been a tremendous privilege to be able to do that.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for everything that you're doing to support young people. Liz, when you introduced yourself, you mentioned that 180 Turning Lives Around is the parent organization for Second Floor. And I know that 180 is also contracted with DCF through our Division on Women to support survivors of domestic violence. I'm wondering, are there parallels between how we support survivors of DV and how we support young people through the Second Floor service?
Sure. So I think there are parallels. And 180 Turning Lives Around is a nearly 50-year organization providing domestic violence and sexual violence response in Monmouth County. So when presented with the opportunity to run the Second Floor Youth Helpline, it was kind of like, well, this is an interesting fit. But we knew that it's about prevention. And we know that anything that starts early and that is a tool for young people will ultimately help our mission and help, all of the issues that are out there. But I think really when you're talking about the parallels, we're really talking about trauma-informed conversations. We're talking about compassion when we are dealing with young people, the same way we would be dealing with survivors of domestic and sexual violence.
Yeah. When we think about the Second Floor service, and Kyle, I think you probably can shed some light on this because I'm wondering, since it was launched, we've integrated some other technologies. We've brought in texting, which, in 2008 wasn't really all that prevalent, but now it's the way of life. Mm-hmm. But who are we asking to inform those decisions around how we're supporting young people? And because I know you're the youth ambassador or one of the youth ambassadors for Second Floor, how do we incorporate youth voice in the design around Second Floor?
So actually, we've had 3,000 downloads within the month that the app is released.
Okay.
So that tells us that the youth is interacting with our app, and we were really happy to see that.
Yeah.
We also have youth focus groups that focus on like how we're marketing our app and how we're reaching out to the youth to make it more accessible for the youth.
Okay. So, but it is something that's being informed by the youth that are being served by this service.
So in 2008, like you said, we were a call-only line. And if I'm being transparent, we got a lot of calls from kids that were what you might want to call prank call. And we welcomed that. We felt like that was what we would call our testing calls.
Sure.
Kids were calling and feeling out like, what's going to happen when I call? Somebody going to call my parents, somebody, so that we knew that when they did need us, they were already familiar with calling the service and familiar with what they were going to get. I always joke, kids would call and do the old, is your refrigerator running? And we would be like, yes, it is. And they, but we would be welcoming that because we knew that that was like validating that what we were doing was important, because we knew that kids would just know that they weren't going to get in trouble for doing those types of calls. And everyone knows you don't get through adolescence without having something happen that is a big deal, whether it's a big deal just to you or whether it's a big deal. Yeah. And the concept is to really get young people familiar with reaching out to us about even smaller things, so that when that big thing does happen, we're there and they're familiar with utilizing our service. Yeah. But we started texting, I believe it was like in 2014. And I will say, I was kind of like, if we don't start texting, we're really not reaching the kids where they are. Sure. And of course, everything, was new, and we were trying to figure out the right and the responsibility to do that. But like Kyle said, really taking the lived experience of young people and knowing like they need this to be a text line because that's how they're communicating. That's their comfort level. Yeah. And that was kind of a game changer for our helpline. But I will say we still get quite a fit. We get a lot of phone calls still. Mm-hmm. We find that kids that are in crisis, that might be kids that are suffering with suicide ideation, child abuse issues, tend to call the helpline. Yeah. And I think that comes from needing to hear that compassion on the other line. So we are so proud to be able to have kind of an array of services so that we're having the young people be able to decide what works for them in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's also around this whole idea of emotional safety. And, when is it a good time to place that phone call versus, I can, if I'm having if I'm having some sort of fight with my parents, probably picking up the phone and calling Second Floor in the midst of that fight isn't going to really help out. It's not going to de-escalate the fight. Right. But I can text, if I'm experiencing some sort of challenge that requires a little more nuance, a little more anonymity. I can send that text message and connect to somebody. 2008, we were a helpline. Mm-hmm. 2014, we had the text line component. What point did we start doing the message boards and the forums?
We had a message board right from the start in 2008 because we knew that there was a value in kids that wanted to type, not talk,
Mm-hmm.
and really have a value in having a repository where kids could go out and explore answers without having to actually contact us.
Yeah.
And, I'm excited to say we're talking today about our new app that launched. We're really taking the way that we were doing that message board to a whole different level with this launch. And we're really, really proud of that. And our message board, kids were typing in about all different kinds of things. And I think, it was great that we would be responding. Tricia would be someone that is, on the other end responding. But was even better was when a young person like Kyle would respond to someone else and say, hey, I've been there too. Did you, have you thought about doing this? Because the peer-to-peer, it's just wildly wanted by kids. They want to feel like they are not alone, and that other people have been going through what they are going through. So it's really just such a nice way to have a community.
Yeah, it's really building that community of support. It's a authentic engagement with someone who's experienced what you're experiencing or something similar to what you're experiencing.
And I think we also find that the people that are providing that input to somebody else is getting that satisfaction that kind of heals them and makes them feel well.
Yeah.
So it's good on both ways.
Yeah. No, it's
to give and to receive.
Tapping into that sense of meaning and value.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Trish, let's talk a little bit about when that call comes in or text or a contact through the app. What's that process look like for Second Floor? What are the steps that happen to support the youth?
As in like when they call in or when they text in, they usually just have to consent for our services. And then we just start off kind of slow and we just say, hey, what would you like to talk about today?
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes they'll, if it's their first time, would be like, I don't really know how to do this. Like, what would I say? What do I do?
Yeah.
And that's when we just kind of confirm to them, like, well, what would you tell a friend? Or what led you to this point that you felt like you needed to make a contact?
Yeah.
And then they'll kind of start from there. We'll scratch a surface, go through whatever it is that is on their mind at the time, which again could be almost anything. So, and then we just kind of provide them with that support that they need, whether it's just listening or providing them with some resources or role playing. We're kind of across the board with different means of support.
Okay. The person that's on the other end of the phone, what kind of training do they receive? It's not really a clinician necessarily. You're not talking to a therapist, but you are talking to someone who has some sort of training in providing some support. What does that look like?
Yes. So they all have to have some form of mental health counseling with their experience. We also have our own training process that they have to go through. They have to meet, and they also have to do quarterly trainings to meet a standard that we have to best, meet the needs for our population.
Yeah.
It's a 40-hour training. And the majority of the counselors that we have are master's level, mostly licensed mental health professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that the key is really to make sure that we are continuing, like Tricia, to do that quarterly training because things change so quickly, and we want to make sure that we are we're validating the experiences that young people are having and seeming like we know what's going on in the community. So that's really important. I'm often saying that how incredibly wonderful that New Jersey has this resource for New Jersey kids. To my knowledge, there's not another state that really has something that is an anything line.
Yeah.
And certainly to be able to get resources and to be able to research for resources with the young people while we're working with them that are very specific to them, that are in their backyard, is definitely such a good way for them to feel like they are totally connected to their community, connected to where they are, and I think that just makes us very unique. It makes us very unique. No one's ever going to reach us and reach a bot or get an answer that is crafted in an AI. It's a real person who is trying to help you, who's trying to ultimately identify a trusted adult or the next steps in your problem.
Yeah.
And we find that if we can make sure that we are ending the conversation with the young person feeling better than when they contacted us, that's a great first step. And the average conversation that we are having, whether that's on chat or via text message or on the phone, is over 25 minutes. So we are spending a lot of time with the young people that are contacting us. Like Trish said, this isn't a what's your problem today. This is, we're so glad you called. Talk to us about anything. Yeah. And that's where we begin.
Yeah.
So we actually have a moment so that I could tell you a little funny story kind of with our helpline in terms of this.
Yeah.
All right. So last year I was actually at one of the schools, and I kept telling the students as I was meeting with them, you could talk to us about anything, anything. They're like, really, anything? And I said, yes. Like if you go down the hallway and if you stub your toe and nobody is there to hear you complain about it, you could text in and complain about it, and we will respond to that.
Yeah.
And then later on that night, I was working on the helpline, and I had gotten a texter that texted in saying, ow, I stubbed my toe. So they're hearing us. They know that we're there. And just by that, they're knowing that they'll listen to me talk about my toe, they're going to listen about anything.
Yeah.
So it's really, really awesome.
Yeah. Well, this whole idea of an anything line, I was talking with a colleague before we came in here, and recognizing that there's a lot of stressors in life today. Some may be internal to my family. Some may be external to the family unit. It might be climate change. It might be the situation, globally in terms of global conflicts. It might be the election coming up. There can be so many different things that create stress in a young person's life. The interesting thing about stress is that whether it's internal to you or external to your environment, the response is the same. And I think that idea of providing anything support, the crisis is the crisis, but we're trying to create a safe space for you to get a level of clarity, problem solving, maybe some agency on how to move forward because you're stuck in your emotions. I think that's so effective. And I'm wondering, when we think about the model of Second Floor, how often are we getting calls that might just be, I saw something on the news and I'm kind of freaking out about it?
That happens quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
And our community board, we see, I recently saw that someone had posted saying that they had a friend who lived in Florida and they were not able to be in contact with them. And they were very concerned, through the hurricane, through Hurricane Helene. And, just to be able to voice that somewhere. And of course, we're there to be supportive and try to explain that, phones might be down and things. And then the young person did respond saying that they were able to reach their friend and their friend was okay. Yeah. And then what was kind of interesting was that weeks later, or when the next hurricane came to Florida, someone else had posted, I hope your friend is still okay through this hurricane. So clearly you had someone who was experiencing a very personal connection to someone they were worried about in the hurricane. But then you also had another youth who was connecting in that community way and just generally knowing that the headlines they were seeing were triggering and that, that people aren't okay when people are going through that. Even if you don't have someone that it could be triggering to something that you experienced, or even just out of sheer compassion and being a human being. I mean, it's tough to be an adolescent. I was talking to Kyle on the way over here, and he was mentioning how often, Second Floor could be a good resource for when you're concerned about a friend. And we do get quite a bit of contacts and conversations about young people concerned about another person. Yeah. And, that's an area where we find it can be very hard because you feel like, you don't want to go to your parent because maybe that will be kind of snitching on your friend, or maybe, you don't know what to do. And, Kyle was saying that if you contacted your parents and you said, I have a friend that I felt like maybe he was going to hurt themselves, that could start a spiral of events that could be really scary for an individual to feel like they have to take that responsibility for starting that, and to be able to talk it through with someone and somebody who is experienced and trained and, is going to be just a sounding board for what is the best next steps to take.
Yeah. And I think, there are probably times when, I have a friend is legit, you have a friend, and sometimes it's just a tool for anonymity. I have this friend who runs a podcast. But that whole idea of giving yourself sort of another level of safety before putting yourself out emotionally, sharing something that might be difficult that you're experiencing right now. And, the line doesn't care, like whether it's really your friend or it's somebody, it's yourself, it's the same level of support.
Yeah. Even on like the non-serious side of things, if I was having trouble cramming for a psych exam or studying for a psych exam or a paper that I had, a research paper, and I waited till the last 5 days before it was due to do it the night before, I could post on our community board and, have other youth who are in my position cramming, studying, reach out to me and give me better advice for how to study, how to prepare for it.
Like get off the board and start studying.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But even calling or texting with somebody, right, can sometimes, right, be that kind of break that you need in your brain to kind of keep you going forward, right?
Yeah.
It's
well, it's also that sense of safety.
Yes.
Because we were talking about it before. Like if I'm caught up in my emotions or that anxiety response, that stress response, I'm not thinking, well, what do I have to do to get myself out of this stress response? I'm just thinking, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do, where to go. So having that safe space to talk to somebody and say, okay, deep breaths, let's walk through it. Let's, try out a couple different ideas and see what fits for you and your situation. I think that gives you sort of the permission to get into a space of solving the thing that you're stressing about rather than just focusing on the stress. Yeah.
I used to always say, if everyone walked around carrying a sign with all of the things that were going on in their head, and we'd all feel a lot less alone. And I think that is really the concept for our helpline, is to really, to create that safe space, like you said, that is going to make you feel not so alone. And nothing that you ever call or text or chat with us about is going to shock us. No one's going to feel shocked on the other end. And I know sometimes the things that are in your head, once you say them out loud, right? I mean, that's for everyone.
Yeah.
I often think adults need an anything line, right? I mean, because sometimes just the things that are living in your head, once you get them out, are so much more manageable.
Yeah, it takes away the power.
I'm really happy to say today that I feel like that confidential anonymity is definitely important. But kids, the stigma is gone. Like back in 2008, when we first were having phone calls from kids, you felt like you'd hear kids that they were, in their bathrooms. They were really trying to be discreet because there was a stigma about reaching out for help. And I've been with the helpline since it was statewide. Been with the organization for 17 years. And I have seen such a shift in the way that kids are just so much more supportive of each other when they reach out. Kids want their friends to get help. We can't take credit for that, but I like to think that in our little corner of the world, we were able to make an impact in that way. Trisha will, if you hear me often say, we'll talk about, that confidential piece and everything. And I'm always like, that's so important. And we do everything to be, so responsible to honor that confidentiality. But the kids are, kids like Kyle who are out there and just saying, getting help is the right thing to do. And there should be resources for young people. We shouldn't have to suffer. And that's a sea change from what it was in 2008.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think of my own youth and, having experienced bullying, having experienced, having lost some loved ones in my family early on and trying to process all of that. And very much a sense of, well, I got to process this on my own. Mom and dad, they've got their own problems. They lost a loved one, it was a grandparent or something like that. And I just got to figure this out. Like, I got to figure it out for myself and get into a space of not really figuring it out well for myself because I'm not trained in this. I'm a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid. And I talk to my 13-year-olds now and say, well, you can talk to me about anything. And that was something that I didn't hear growing up. Not that my parents did anything wrong. It just wasn't done in parenting back then.
Yeah. It's a different time.
But I get to the point now where I say, well, do you have a trusted adult you can talk to, if not me, or if not, your mom or whatever else? And oh, yeah, the counselor in school, and she wants to talk about my feelings all the time. It's like my son gets annoyed because he has to talk about his feelings. But it does reduce this whole idea of stigma. Like, you have places you can go to. You might not feel like in the moment that they're just kind of bothering you, but they're always open. They're always available. And I think that's what Second Floor is too. It's, if it feels too difficult or too personal to reach out to a parent, or even if the parent just doesn't have the tools to be able to be supportive, that you're a resource for young people to connect to. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we talked about 2003 pilot, 2008, the helplines launched, the message boards launched as sort of a repository for information. 2014 text line, 2024, we get to the app. And Kyle, you said 3,000 downloads in how long?
In a month, yeah.
In a month, okay. So are we seeing, is that more Apple users or,
Primarily
Apple users?
Primarily.
Okay.
I would say it's 70% Apple users, and then Android, about 30%.
Okay, well, that probably
That's not
breaks
too bad.
down to what it looks like in the
Yes.
world too.
Yes.
Yeah. I know that the connections through the helpline haven't stopped and the texting hasn't stopped. But are we seeing with the app, are we seeing more of it shifting to chat? Are we seeing more of it shift to the app usage versus the other platforms? Or is it just everything all
That
at
is
once?
our hope. Our
Okay.
hope is that the app is really going to encourage young people to use the chat platform that's inside of the app.
Yeah.
Like Kyle said, 3,000 downloads, which is really huge. We are so very grateful for the partnership with the Department of Children and Families and for Governor Murphy and First Lady Tammy Murphy's commitment to young people here in New Jersey through Second Floor. And we are able to do so many things different now in this app. And one of the things that I think is going to really transform the ability to remind kids that we're here is that we will be able to do push notifications through that app. So if we've got 3,000 kids and we're able to send a push notification on a Friday that's like heading into the weekend, don't forget we're here.
Mm-hmm.
We're really able to reach them right where they are. So the goal is really to continue to do what we've been doing and doing well, having these conversations with kids in whatever platform they feel most comfortable. But really to know that chat function inside of the app, it is new and transformative to the way that we can communicate. It creates a very private way to do that. Young people are able to maintain their chats or they're able to clear them. So you can go back and reference them if you wanted to, or you can delete them off of your phone. It's a really personal experience for the young person to be inside of the app and get resources in the community board. We have quizzes. We're really, really proud of it.
Yeah. This idea of technology and sort of evolving with the times, how important is that to Second Floor in terms of, getting that engagement? Like right now we have an app. What's next? What's coming next for Second Floor?
We were talking as we were headed over here, and we were talking about how one thing that is surprising that we've seen as we've been taking a close look at our metrics over the past month that we have launched the app is there is quite a bit of going to the resource page, that self-help access, more than I would have anticipated. And like I said, I've been with the helpline since it was statewide. So I feel like we really have realized that we have to develop that area in our app to make sure that our resources are robust, that they're up to date, that they're easy to access. So we're going to be taking a look at that and really figuring out how we engage with young people like Kyle and saying, what's working, what's not working, what could we be doing better? Like, there were quite a few things that we did as we were figuring out our sort of marketing campaign behind this new launch, that I was like, this is really great. And the kids were like, yeah, no, we don't like that.
Yeah.
And it was like, we have to listen to the kids. And there were so many things that we were like on the fence about. Like, do we like this? Do we like that? Let's put it out to the youth focus groups. And they always were able to give us their feedback. And it all really helped us to make very good decisions on how we move forward. So we can't stop doing that. I mean, that's the young people. This is for young people. It has to be driven through their voices and their opinions. And I'm really pleased to say that this project to launch this app created a lot of opportunity to create these focus groups, to re-engage with some youth ambassadors like Kyle. And we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah. I don't want you to feel too bad about having to go back to the drawing board on some of the marketing. I share, we have a DCF Youth Council. And this was a few years back. We recognized, again, part of this whole response to the youth mental health crisis is we recognized that there was a need for some suicide prevention messaging and wanting to talk to youth in their voice about how you can support a peer just by, lending a helping hand and knowing where to reach out to for help if you need more than that. So I, drafted a script and, I was really proud of it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. This is definitely going to reach the youth, and presented it to the youth council and they ripped it apart.
They're good.
We
for
have
that.
been there. We have been there. We have been there.
And I think that's also part of this whole, removing stigma, but youth are more open than they were in previous years, and they're willing to share. If you ask the question, they're going to tell you.
Yes.
So.
And I will say, through these focus groups, the amount of respect that the young people showed each other was really remarkable to me. They were really all so kind to each other and validated each other's opinions. It really felt like we were on to something very special. And I know that we are. When this group came together, that was sort of, a small sampling of the community that we were building. And to see how supportive they were of each other. They were, I was like, we have to make sure that we're creating this very safe space where people can express their comments. And what do we do if somebody is, rude to another one? None of that. I mean, we had about 5 focus groups with over 1,000 young people engaged with us. Not one single time did anyone make a negative comment about, some feedback somebody had provided. And I thought that was just remarkable.
Yeah.
They were a good group.
Well, I mean, they're there for the right reasons too.
Yes.
They're getting involved because they want to help. And so
I was like, I'm the worst. I'm like assuming the worst. And, but it was really a really special time to put this project together. Yeah. It really was.
Let's talk a little bit about anonymity and confidentiality. I know that this is one of the core principles that Second Floor is built upon, that anything that's shared there stays there. But there are times when that can't be the case, right? If someone's, saying that they're thinking about suicide or they're thinking about hurting someone else, and you do have to step in and, provide some additional support outside of the Second Floor line. What does that look like when that happens, when you do have to kind of bring in someone else because someone's in an immediate risk?
So you're exactly right that if someone is potentially being harmed, going to harm themselves or harm someone else, we do have to break that confidentiality to provide them with a crisis response.
Yep.
Our counselors are trained and continually trained in crisis intervention. And, we are making sure that we're communicating that right from the start when we are engaging in conversations. When young people agree to communicate with us, we're telling them that this is our disclaimer.
Yeah.
But our ultimate goal is to provide some type of warm handoff. So best case scenario is that we are able to continue to have the conversations, bring out emergency services while we continue to engage in conversations, and really have a successful outcome because we do it in a way that doesn't feel I mean, the situation is likely scary, but it doesn't feel scary. We're not there to try to penalize anyone. We're not, and I know Tricia can speak to that. We have had quite a few really great success stories where we have been able to intervene with a young person who's been in crisis or maybe in an active suicide, and reach out, get emergency services, keep them on the line with us, and make sure that that we've connected them with the help. It's hard work, and I have to give the staff at Second Floor a lot of credit, because those types of crisis interventions can be very, there's a lot of compassion that you have to keep going on in that call, and you also have to take care of yourself after you're, completing those conversations. But I think that we really do it well, and we wouldn't be able to do it without the partners that we have. Great response from law enforcement. Mobile response is one of our resources that we use often. And the Department of Children and Families, DCPMP, we want to keep the youth on the line, and we want to be able to say, okay, we're going to bring in DCPMP, and we're going to be able to say, we have, Sally on the line right now, and she just shared this, and be able to connect them before we drop off the call.
So it's a warm handoff.
So that the youth isn't having to maybe repeat that story these are things we've been doing for the 16 years that we've been statewide, and making sure that we're bringing all of that into our app so that we're doing that safely. Those were the big challenges and the most important pieces of this project. And, I'm quoting Governor Murphy. He said, this app will save lives. This app will save lives. And we know that we know Second Floor has, and we know that it will.
Yeah. No, I absolutely can see the potential for that. I mean, you have somebody reaching out in a moment of crisis, and you're the first line of support. That can be heavy, though.
It's very heavy.
Yes.
I will say New Jersey is very resource rich, and we are very fortunate to have, like I mentioned, great partners. Children's System of Care, it has a robust amount of programming that really helps, to complement the work that Second Floor is doing. But it's heavy work, and like I said earlier, no one gets out of adolescence without there being, something heavy that happens.
Yeah.
And we're very privileged to be able to be there. And I'm very proud of our staff for the work that they do.
I think one thing that is very fortunate about our services is that the kids they're not required to reach out to us. They reach out to us because they need it. So many times we'll find that they'll be in this crisis situation and they want the help. So it makes working with them on that and getting them that help much easier because of that.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We often get kids that say, I need help. Can you help me?
Yeah.
So it's
they're not reluctant to do what they're actually invested in their own help. Yeah. What kind of supports are there for staff on the line?
So the staff does a great job of supporting each other.
Okay.
We have a model where we have a debriefing every time there is a crisis call. We're constantly, our marketing campaign that has come out of this app project is, to take a minute, right? It only takes a second.
Yep.
And that's really important, right? It's really important that we, my role is to make sure that we're making an investment in our staff and making sure that they are taking care of themselves and are have a toolkit to be able to take care of themselves, a toolkit that they can rely on to feel like they are up to every challenge of every conversation that they're having. And then even on sort of the side, I'm sure Tricia can tell you, the average length of time that a Second Floor counselor has been with our organization is 10 years. So we have a network that we've created internally. We have our community, and they all lean on each other.
Yeah, it really is like a family. We've all known each other for quite some time. So we can we know when somebody's going through something heavy, and we're just there. We offer that, what do you want to talk about? Let's get this off your chest. Let's see, let's make the most of this situation. It's nice that we're all caring and compassionate towards each other. Hence why they're all there forever. We call them fossils because they've been there for so long, but it's true. But that's because we do have that really good support.
Yeah. I've worked with DCF since 2018, and I've told people, new people coming in, I said, you'll never work in a place where your emotions matter more. And that's a good thing.
Right.
But it's because if you're working with social workers, mental health professionals, you don't turn that off. Like, you're always providing that support, whether it's to the clients or it's, to each other. So that's a really, really positive thing.
Yes. And I will say, as a partner with DCF, that speaks, to us. Every meeting that we have, we worked closely with, our program leads on this project, meeting weekly to make sure that we were all on the right track, because we wanted this important launch to coincide with the beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
And everyone, first and foremost, is about providing excellent, responsible service to young people, but really also about being partners and knowing that this is like incredibly important work. We really appreciate that.
Yeah. You mentioned that New Jersey is resource rich, and at the start of the talk today, I mentioned about a continuum of care around youth mental health. It's not just this deep end clinical therapeutic response, but it's having just a place to call to say, hey, I'm stressing out over a final exam. How important is that idea of the continuum, and how is Second Floor really integrating into that continuum in a way that adds value to every piece of the continuum?
I'll let you answer that, Tricia. Tricia is out working, with all of the partners out in the community. And
yes. So it's just important that we all work together. At the end of the day, we all have the same goal, which is to save lives, make our youth feel validated, make them feel fulfilled, happy, get them on that next wave level. So let's work together, and we all have that mentality. So in order to kind of keep that going, we just make sure, hey, so-and-so is having a resource fair. Let's go. Hey, we're having one. Okay, I'm going to come. We have to work together. We share our youths for different focus groups and whatnot. Just to kind of really embrace that togetherness, that our resources are not in competition against each other, or, that we're just there to help. And we really couldn't get better outcomes if we didn't do that. So moving forward, that's what we're going to continue to do, is continue to be in the schools, continue to work with the other resources, and just make sure that our callers, our contactors that come in, know about what's available to them. Because yes, New Jersey is very resource rich, but I also feel like we kind of lack in the awareness of what's available. There's so much, but nobody really, I don't want to say nobody, but a lot of the youth, they don't know that it's there. Mm-hmm. So,
and you have new kids each, we always talk about how important it is, this marketing piece, because, next year there will be a new set of kids entering middle school. There'll be, so you're constantly reaching, a whole different set of young people. We often see that we have young people who are 24 or 25, and they have been using the service since they were, in middle school.
Yeah.
And we want that. And we want to, for every young person who is now 10, 11 years old, to know about us. So they have a decade worth of being able to utilize our services and have that in their pocket, literally have that in their pocket. So our marketing, and getting the word out, spreading the word and awareness, we couldn't do that without our partners. And vice versa, right?
Yes.
We're always trying to figure out how we can, align all of the messaging so that young people feel that they are, in New Jersey, I have all of these resources. Yeah. And Second Floor's advantage is really like, just contact us because we will point you in the right direction from there.
Yeah.
And how wonderful to be able to have a one-stop shop kind of
Yeah, it
concept.
almost becomes a convener of resources at that
Exactly.
point. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think it's one of those things that when you don't need the services, for young people at least, they may not care about it because they've got other things that they're working on. They've got, prom, they've got finals, they've got midterms, they've got whatever. When you do need the services, you're already in that heightened emotional state. You might not know where to turn. So it's, figuring out how do we get in people's, consciousness that this is where you can turn when you do need that help. And then, we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about some of the success stories. And I think, Trish, this is for you. And Kyle, you can probably share some there too.
So,
Sure. Did we?
SD drive?
So which thought am I holding?
all of them.
Success stories, right?
Okay. It's just, okay. Phew. I was like, if I had to repeat the other part. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some success stories. And Trish, I think this is for you. And Kyle, you might be able to share some of these as well.
Yeah.
Preserving confidentiality and anonymity. But let's talk about instances that we know about where Second Floor has made the difference in a young person's life and the trajectory. What does that look like? And how do you carry that forward as a staff person, as sort of like a rejuvenating thing, from day to day?
Well, I have to say that one little stinky part about being a counselor on the helpline is that you never really get that follow-up. What happened after our conversation? So I could tell you that when we have conversations that we feel like go well, where they call in and they might be in hysterics, panic attacks and whatnot, we walk them through that.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they're like, I feel pretty good right now.
Yeah.
That in itself is a huge success. And we feel on top of the world, because we were able to help that child or teen who was at this point of devastation to now feel like they can come off the phone with us and continue on. Where would they have been without? So to me, that's successful. But I have to say, when we had started with our focus groups for the app, we had at one point asked, does anybody have any success stories, about Second Floor or just anything positive to say? The stories that came in, I was like, wow, never really thought about it. How empowering they are, that they would say, I was in this really bad place and I contacted Second Floor and it really gave me the options that I needed to move past it and move on. And, all different stories across the board like that, where they were just so grateful for the services that were there and available to them. But a lot of what we see with trends is that the focus groups and the youth that we speak with out throughout the community, their stories really linked to just having that increased accessibility. They don't have to think about it when they call us. They just go on their phone and now they don't even have to text or call. They can just go through the app and they have somebody that they can talk to. They don't have to make an appointment. They don't have to ask mom and dad. They say that kind of drives just the positive motion of their emotions, so there's that. A lot of the stories that we hear link to peer support with the community board. As I had said earlier, not only are the people that are posting feeling good about one, posting, two, getting responses from their friends, but the people that are responding are feeling like, I'm going to help this person.
Yeah.
It feels good to help, especially if it's something that's relatable that you've already been through. The tailored resources, the stories that we hear coming in. Again, there were so many stories, so I kind of made like a little list. But the tailored resources also help because there are so many resources in our state. We just said that is overwhelming. But when you log onto our app, we'll have little like, how are you feeling today? Questionnaires, and they'll have to poke and like, well, are you feeling sad? Are you feeling happy? Which way? And based on their responses, we guide them to resources that would best fit them in that moment, so that they're success stories. You linked me to this, and I didn't even have to talk to anybody, you know, and it wasn't like they were just looking at a big list. It's just right there.
Yeah.
And then the last is just that immediate support, you know, just having that instant, somebody is there to talk literally within minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes, like seconds. Yes. Seconds. Yes. You know, they have a counselor ready to talk to them, because we know how kids are there, or the youth. Something's there one moment and then it's gone the next.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're not there in that moment, where's that thought going to be later?
Yep.
You know, so that also really participated in a lot of the success stories that we have seen.
Yeah, thankfully as an adult, I don't get that anymore.
Lucky.
I think Trisha is modest in the way, if we were really talking about success, is that if I go back when we launched in 2008 and you walked into a school and you said, whether it was to the professionals in the school or to the young people in the school, how many of you know about Second Floor? And maybe a few hands would go up. And now, if you go into the schools, Trisha's doing presentations, how many of you know about Second Floor? You're going to get those hands up. We have done a great job of becoming a sort of fixture in the schools, a fixture in kids' lives that they've known as a resource. And that branding has been so important. And I think now kind of sky's the limit with the app. We're able to really, like I mentioned, push notifications. We're actually finding a safe way to keep that engagement level up. So I think, you know, overall, the amount of folks that know about Second Floor, we talked about earlier that Kyle had looked back in his phone and saw that in his freshman year of high school, he became familiar with Second Floor. And I'm so grateful that he is here today. And look, you know, that's the kind of success we want. Yes. We want for there to be a multiple years of using Second Floor, and be able to know that kids don't have to ever think about it, because it becomes part of them.
Yeah, it was definitely huge for me to see a memory just recently, too, from my freshman year of high school come up on my phone that had Second Floor's number on there that I had taken a picture of during the pep rally because I thought it might be something that I would need in the future. And now here I am, full circle, being an ambassador for them and helping with the youth. And mental health is something that's near and dear to my heart. So to be here doing this is really huge.
Yeah. Now, when you think about the other, how many youth ambassadors do you work with?
We have many youth ambassadors. Like they said, we also have like almost 1,000 students within our focus groups as well.
Focus groups and the youth ambassador. Yeah. What's the sense? Now, I know we talked a little bit about the sense of youth helping youth, but thinking about those youth that you're working with that are engaging with Second Floor in a way to promote the service, that are engaging with Second Floor in a way to direct the service, you know, whether it's through focus groups or conversations. How empowered are they, or how do they feel about it? You know, it's just getting into that space of, you know, I'm trying to make a difference.
Very empowered. It's a very empowering thing to be able to help people your age, younger, a little bit older, and understand that we all have something in common when it comes to dealing with the different stresses of life, and that we can all come together to help each other. It's very empowering.
As Trish said, we're not all going to get through the adolescence without having something happen that is, you know, defined as a crisis, however we might define that ourselves. But knowing that there's a service out there, Second Floor, and all of you working on that, to help youth address that crisis, to get to a space of emotional safety, and to hopefully find a solution. You know, where do I go from here? To know that that's there for my kids, it feels great. And thank you for providing that service to the state of New Jersey.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So next month, we're going to invite another partner into our space here on the 7th floor to talk about some of the partnership that we have in support of youth in care. So we're going to bring in One Simple Wish. It is the holidays, so we want to talk a little bit about what wish fulfillment means for youth that are in care at DCPNP. But whether or not you're connecting to help through a second floor app, or you're connecting to someone who can, make a wish happen, like a One Simple Wish. We hope that you know that there are resources out there to help. Stress is real. Anxiety is real. But at the end of the day, there are helpers. As the Dr. Seuss line, you always look for the helpers.
Yeah.
And these people here are some of the helpers. So thank you for tuning in. On behalf of my producers and the Office of Communications and Public Affairs, this is Jason Bukowski signing off, and tune in next month for more DCF on the Air.